So we're going to be in the book of John this morning. We got this week and next week, and then our revival starts. And so I felt like there's this passage the Lord wanted me to preach on, and so we're going to do it in two parts. The first part is today, and the second part's next week, which is probably obvious. No, we're doing the second part today. No. But, I'm very glad that I was born in the time that I was born in, in the 20th century. I was born in the 20th century, right? Yeah. There's a lot of things I'm thankful for. I'm a big fan of electricity. I'm a big fan of the combustion engine. There's a lot of things that I'm happy to be born into. Even as far as the Christian life goes, I'm really glad that I was born in the New Covenant era of the church, and very thankful that I can look back on 2,000 years of church history. One of the things that you might have heard before when it comes to Christianity today, but we stand on the shoulders of giants, and that's true. I can look back and read, people from the church in the past, and it's so encouraging that the things that we deal with today and go through, people have already gone through that, and we can read what they've said and be encouraged in what other people have gone through. So I'm very thankful that I was born when I was born. But if there's any other time in history that I would love to visit, it would have been those years when a man named Jesus was walking the earth. We will see him one day. If we've been born again, we'll see him one day, and it'll be wonderful. But that unique time where Jesus was on the earth before he was crucified, when he had a unglorified, normal human body, and he worked every day, and he had his friends he spent time with, to be able to be back in that time and see Jesus at that moment, that very unique moment in history, when nobody quite knew who he was, but something was different about him. When they heard him talk, and something was different. I cannot think of an experience that would be more unbelievable than being back at that moment, seeing Jesus walk the earth and seeing him teach, seeing him build things with his hands, because when you read the Gospels, it was very clear that he was totally unique. In Luke chapter 4, verse 31, it says, and Jesus went down to Capernaum, a city of Galilee, and he was teaching them on the Sabbath. And they were astonished at his teaching, for his word possessed authority. And in the synagogue there was a man who had the spirit of an unclean demon, and he cried out with a loud voice, "What have you to do with us, Jesus of Nazareth? Have you come to destroy us? I know who you are, the Holy One of God." But Jesus rebuked him, saying, "Be silent and come out of him." And when the demon had thrown him down in their midst, he came out of him, having done him no harm. And they were all amazed and said to one another, "What is this word? For with authority and power he commands the unclean spirits, and they come out." And reports about him went out into every place in the surrounding region. And then in John 7, some officers are expected to arrest Jesus, but they don't arrest him. And when they come back, they're asked, "Why didn't you arrest this guy?" And they say, "No one's ever spoke like him." It was just something about him that people were captivated by. It was unlike anything that had come before. But it wasn't just Jesus' words that were getting people's attention. At the very end of John chapter 2, verses 23 through 25, we read, "Now when Jesus was in Jerusalem at the Passover feast, many believed in his name when they saw signs that he was doing. But Jesus on his part did not entrust himself to them, because he knew all people, and he needed no one to bear witness about man, for he himself knew what was in man." What's fascinating about those verses is that when it says the people believed in Jesus, but Jesus did not entrust himself to them, the word used to say that the people believed is the same word that talks about Jesus not entrusting himself to them. It's the word for trust or believe. So what the people had in Jesus, Jesus would not have in the people. You could translate it as the people trusted Jesus, but Jesus did not trust the people. Why? It says he knew what was in man. In other words, Jesus knew that they did not have genuine faith in him. They did not genuinely believe. It wasn't real faith that they had. They just got excited because they saw some miracles that he was doing. One other such person that became very interested in Jesus was a man named Nicodemus. And this is where we begin this story this morning. I've just been fascinated with this story of Nicodemus and Jesus for the past couple weeks, probably because there's a part of this story that I had misunderstood up until about 2 weeks ago. So I had been fascinated with it ever since I realized what the actual meaning of it was. But in John 3:1, it says, "Now there was a man of the Pharisees named Nicodemus, a ruler of the Jews." So it says Nicodemus was a ruler of the Jews. What exactly does that mean? Well, back in the day of Jesus, the Jewish group that ruled over all Jewish people was called the Sanhedrin. They were made up of about 70 members of people from the chief priests and the scribes and the elders. And within the Sanhedrin, there was 3 different parties of people within the Sanhedrin. There was the Pharisees, the Sadducees, and the Essenes. Those are the 3 groups. And Nicodemus was a Pharisee. He was considered pretty much, an expert in all things pertaining to the Jewish faith. That's how the Pharisees like to market themselves. And you've probably heard of all the horrible things that Jesus said that the Pharisees would do. And what's important to realize is that just because many Pharisees were bad, it doesn't mean that the party of the Pharisees was bad by their very nature. Just like in politics today, the Republican Party and the Democratic Party, and each party has its good and bad people. Many think that there's no good people anymore in either of them. But I thought you'd laugh more at that. Anyway, maybe you guys didn't think it was a joke. I guess it's not really a joke. But so verse 2, it says that this man, Nicodemus, came to Jesus by night, and he said to him, "Rabbi, we know that you are a teacher come from God, for no one can do these signs that you do unless God is with him." And there's, for a long time, been much speculation as to why Nicodemus came to see Jesus at night. A popular idea is that Nicodemus came at night because, he didn't want anybody to see him talking to Jesus because he was embarrassed to be approaching Jesus. Another likely reason could be that nighttime was just easier to talk to Jesus. During the day, he had a lot more attention. There would have been a lot of crowds trying to get to him. So coming to see him at night might have been more convenient. Other people have suggested that the darkness of the night represents the spiritual darkness of Nicodemus. And while we can't truly know the specific reason why he came to Jesus at night, I would probably lean towards the fact that it was just probably more convenient for him to go and see Jesus. I don't know that Nicodemus would have been that embarrassed that he would have had to go at night when nobody was around. I don't know if that's the case. But it is interesting that Nicodemus called Jesus rabbi. Nicodemus himself was a rabbi. And usually the Pharisees would have had some narcissism about being the ones that knew the law of God best. But the fact that Nicodemus came to Jesus and called him rabbi, that tells us something. That tells us that he believed Jesus could tell him some things that he wasn't aware of, that he actually respected Jesus. He says to him, "Rabbi, we know that you are a teacher come from God, for no one can do the signs that you do unless God is actually with him." So just like with many other people, the signs, the works of Jesus got Nicodemus's attention. And he comes to Jesus and he says, "Hey, I know you're the real deal. You have to be from God. Nobody could do what you do unless they have some sort of relationship with God." And this kind of goes along with something else Jesus said later in John chapter 10. In John chapter 10, Jesus, once again says something that upsets everybody. And, like I'm sure whenever you've accidentally upset somebody, they pick up rocks to stone you. That's what they did to Jesus, which implies that Jesus said something horrifically blasphemous. Basically, he claimed that he was equal with God, which was an incredibly blasphemous thing to do, unless Jesus happened to be equal with God, which he in fact was equal with God. So they got very upset at him. And so as they're picking up stones to stone him, he says to them in John 10, verse 37, "If I am not doing the works of my Father, then don't believe me. But if I do them, even though you do not believe me, believe the works, that you may know and understand that the Father is in me and I am in the Father." So Jesus says, hey, if you're not going to believe what I tell you, at least believe what I'm doing. At least believe the works, the signs that I'm doing. Those should be able to prove to you that I am who I say I am. So we have Jesus saying that his signs are to prove to us that he is genuine. And that's exactly what seems to be going on with Nicodemus here in John 3. He saw the signs that Jesus did and knew that he had to be from God because of the things that he was doing. And I think if we read between the lines, it's very clear why he has come to Jesus in John 3. The signs or the works of Jesus told Nicodemus that Jesus is from God, but Nicodemus wants the rest of the story. I think that's why he's going to Jesus. It seems obvious that he is coming to Jesus, so Jesus will tell him exactly who he is and what he's doing, right? Nicodemus says, Jesus, I saw what you did, and obviously you have to come from God, but what else is going on? I mean, who are you? What are you doing here? That's why he came to Jesus. He wants to know what's going on. And so in this verse, there's a big assumption on Nicodemus's part. I think Nicodemus clearly is assuming that he and the people he's representing, because he's using the word we, so either he's just kind of hiding behind everybody else. Jesus, we were wondering. A friend of mine was wondering a little bit more about you. It's just I'm here for a friend. Either he was doing that, or there was other people that were like, Nicodemus, go and ask him, go and talk to him. But there's an assumption that Nicodemus and other people are fully capable of judging what Jesus does and verifying who he is. Nicodemus thinks he is in the judgment seat and he will approve or disprove who Jesus is and what he's doing. Almost like the relevance of Jesus depends on men, right? Jesus is relevant in so much as other people determine whether or not he's relevant. That's kind of what Nicodemus is doing here. And this kind of thing is still going on today. People verifying the relevance of the Bible and of Jesus. It's become known in a very popular term. You've probably heard of people that say they're deconstructing their faith. You probably heard that today. That term's going around a lot. I'm not a big fan of that term. I mean, one reason is it's just not a biblical term. And the other thing is it means so many different things to so many different people. That term. It has such a wide range, which doesn't help anybody. There does come a point in, I think, every Christian's life where they realize that, a lot of people come to the realization that they believe in God because people just told them to believe in God. That happens to a lot of people that grow up in church. They grow up in church and they're told, okay, we believe in God. This is what you do. And obviously, as Christian parents, that's what we do. We tell our children God is real, Jesus is real, the Bible's real. But there comes a point when a lot of people realize, you know what? I'm only doing this because somebody told me to go to church and told me to believe in God. I don't even know if I believe in him for myself. And so those people do it. They start looking into it for themselves, reading the Bible for themselves, studying for themselves, because they want to know that their faith is theirs and not just what other people told them to. And a lot of people use the term deconstruction for that, okay? And that process is very important. We all need to know why we are Christians. We all need to know why do we believe the Bible? Why do we believe? We need to know those things. But there's another meaning of the term deconstruction that I've seen a lot of people, and it's a totally different story. I've seen a lot of people who come across something in the Bible that they don't like, something that offends them, something they're uncomfortable with, something they just don't like and they don't want to believe is true, whether it's something about God, a lot of it, sometimes the problem of suffering, you read the Old Testament and God tells the Israelites to annihilate an entire city of men, women, and children. And some people like, well, I can't believe in God if he does that. Or just, other issues. There's a lot of issues that do that. But I've seen this and people end up thinking, I don't like this. And so what they do is they do what they call deconstruction, but what they're really doing is they look through the Bible and they decide what they like and what they don't like. And so Christianity now becomes not about whether it's true, about whether or not you like it, whether or not it makes you comfortable or uncomfortable. And a lot of people end up rejecting the things because they just don't like them. And that's another way. And that is... that's called rejecting Jesus. There's no other way to put it. Now, as we get back to Nicodemus, I don't think he's going to some sort of an extreme like that, because obviously, as a rabbi, as a Pharisee, he believes the Bible as they had back then, the Old Testament. He believes it's the Word of God. But Nicodemus is under the impression that he already has all the spiritual ability and authority to judge who Jesus is. And on the surface, that kind of appears to go in line with what Jesus said in John 10 that I just read, where he says to the people, hey, if you don't believe what I'm saying, at least use my works to verify that I am who I say I am. But there's something else that throws a wrench into all of this. In Matthew 24:24, Jesus says, false Christs and false prophets will arise and perform great signs and wonders so as to lead astray, if possible, even the elect. Now, Matthew 24 as a whole chapter is referring to an event that happened not long after, it happened about 40 years after Jesus was on the earth, and he was talking about the destruction of Jerusalem. There's a lot of discussion. A lot of people think that Matthew 24 is about the end of the world. I don't think that fits when you look at it. It fits so perfectly with the destruction of Jerusalem that happened in 70 AD. But Jesus just said there will be false prophets who essentially perform false signs to lead people astray. And Paul says something similar in 2 Thessalonians 2, 9 and 10. In 2 Thessalonians 2, Paul is talking about this man of lawlessness that is going to come up on the scene. And he says in 2 Thessalonians 2, 9, the coming of the lawless one is by the activity of Satan with all power and false signs and wonders, and with all wicked deception for those who are perishing because they refuse to love the truth and so be saved. So Jesus said in John 10 that his signs will be able to tell us whether or not he's genuine. But then in Matthew 24, he says that people will be able to perform counterfeit signs. Why would Satan, who is behind all the counterfeit stuff, why would he be able to perform something that we're supposed to depend on to verify the genuineness of Jesus? If Jesus says, look at these things and they'll tell you who I am, why would he then allow Satan to do those same things? That doesn't make any sense. How could we then tell the difference? And it makes you wonder, would Nicodemus have gone up to anybody performing signs and said, I know you're from God? Would he have gone up to anybody and told them that just because they were doing some miraculous stuff? Here's the issue. The issue is not being able to recognize signs in general when they're being done. The issue is being able to recognize the source of the signs that you're looking at. That's what this is all about. It's not just, oh, there's a sign, that means this. No, 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 no. Where's the sign coming from? Who is the source of the miraculous stuff that you're watching? Because there are a lot of people that can do miraculous stuff in the name of Jesus, and it's not God at all. You see a lot of them on TV, and they do miraculous stuff right before they tell you that you need to send them a bunch of money, and God will give you a miracle. How do you know what is a good and false work when they look identical? How in the world can you tell the difference to even know if this is God at all? And that is at the root of John chapter 3. Nicodemus comes to Jesus thinking that his heart and his mind are exactly where they should be to understand him. Nicodemus thinks, I'm good, I've got everything I need. So Jesus, tell me who you are so that because I'll be able to get it and we'll be on the same page. And Jesus' response to Nicodemus is, I don't think at all what he was expecting. His response basically tells Nicodemus that he has absolutely no idea what he's talking about. Because Jesus says, in his response to him in John 3:3, truly, truly, I say to you, unless one is born again, he cannot see the kingdom of God. So little did Nicodemus know that he, not only was he wrong, but he just wasn't even in the ballpark. There was something that is at the center of all this that he was completely missing. And in the rest of this chapter, Jesus goes on to tell Nicodemus what I think is the most important thing when it comes to the kingdom. Something that is indispensable, and something that if we are going to move forward to see God move in this area, if we don't get what Jesus is going to tell Nicodemus, we will not be able, we won't be able to get in the right mindset to do the work of God if we don't understand what Jesus is getting at when he says to Nicodemus, unless one is born again, it's all over. So that's what we're going to go over next Sunday. What is it that Jesus is about to tell Nicodemus that he just doesn't even have any idea about, that building the kingdom totally hinges on?